I wrote this story following a vacation in the Dordogne area in southern France. It's not original in the sense that I'm retelling a legend. It's a story of a sea monster, a fiery and fearsome dragon of gargantuan size that terrified and terrorized the population of the area. Of course, since this is a legend, it's also a tale in which good in the person of a humble clergyman overcomes evil in the form of the dragon. So here's the story, the miracle of Saint Front. Front lived in the 3rd century of the Common Era. In those days, the town now called Périgueux in southern France was called Versuna. Christianity was probably brought to Versuna by Roman legionaries. This was a more primitive Christianity than the hierarchical structure of pope, cardinals, bishops and priests. It drew on the ideals of the early church with its emphasis on equality between men and women, slave and freeborn, as formulated in St. Paul's writings. Front was apparently born of humble parents, who were themselves devout Christians. Like many in the area, they traced their devotion to the fact the Lord's beloved disciple Mary Magdalene had sanctified the Pays d'Arc at the end of her life by journeying there, where she had died. Front's parents dedicated their firstborn male child to God. They probably expected him to assume some menial function in a priest's or bishop's house. However, the boy showed unusual intellectual ability. So the small brotherhood of ascetics associated with the church in Périgueux taught him to read and write. To call this a monastery would be anachronistic in the 3rd century. Nevertheless, these men, priests all, devoted themselves to a life of prayer and contemplation, and to the very necessary work of copying sacred scripture, so the word might simply not disappear when the last copy of it wore out from age or use. Front might have become just a musty scribe, had not God intervened by the agency of what is today called measles. When the young man recovered from this disease, he was afflicted with such poor eyesight as to disqualify him from scribal activities. Instead, Front felt a call to preach the gospel to all who would listen. In imitation of the earliest Christians, Front baptized them wherever and whenever he travelled. Eventually, Front was acclaimed as Bishop of Périgueux by crowds of his converts. This seems very unorthodox today, but it was common practice in the first centuries of Christianity. Bishop Front might have become celebrated in his own time, yet lost to posterity, but for the singular event in his life and ministry that I will now recall. The legend goes that in the summer of the year 255, a deputation of anguished villagers from the southern part of the Périgueux region approached Bishop Front. They told him of a huge sea monster that was terrorizing their village. Their community was situated on the banks of the Dordogne River, which was the main artery for the transport of goods as well as a valuable fishery. In summertime, when the flow of the river was low, banks of gravel would become visible, leaving only small, shallow channels through which boats could pass. At one point, named La Gratuce, river flowed over a step in an underlying rock. At low water, the boats had to be hauled up and over this small waterfall. The monster would apparently wait in La Gratuce, having emerged from its lair in a cave in the soft sandstone cliffs. Its immensity was said to be so great that it bestrode the whole river, with one clawed foot on the north bank and the other on the south. The sea dragon would terrorize and in some cases attack the boatmen, grasping its unfortunate victim in its powerful forelegs. The condemned man would be carried off in its immense jaws, whereupon the dragon would retire to its lair, digest its victim at its leisure. Bishop Front said to the villagers, "We know that you're a man of God, mighty in words of both faith and deed. Only you, we believe, can save us from the ravages of this horrible beast, which surely must be an agent of Satan himself, for it breathes fire on all who it sees. Please, we implore you, come with us to our village and rid us of this monster." Bishop Front took their pleas to heart. First he went into his humble church, which was by no means a medieval cathedral, but a simple wooden structure. There he prayed for God's blessing on his quest. He petitioned, through the good graces of the Lady Mary Magdalene, that Christ would hold him in his care. Then he followed the little band of villagers, riding a donkey like Jesus when he entered Jerusalem on the final week of his life. After an arduous journey of 3 days through forests that were home to bears and wolves, the guides led the bishop to the site of La Gratuce. The village was filled with the wailing of families who had just lost a loved one in the most recent attack just 4 days earlier. With no body to claim, there could be no burial. The citizens were convinced their loved one's soul must now forever lie in hell, along with the satanic dragon. "Do not fear," said Bishop Franc. "The cross is mightier than any of the works of the evil one. Bring me a loaf made from your finest wheat and a flagon of your finest wine." He told the villagers to gather round, and in the open air he offered them the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. "I beseech you, gracious God," he prayed, "through the merits of the cross of Jesus Christ, that you will look with favour upon your humble servant and all those who are gathered here. May success attend this enterprise, so that good will vanquish evil. This day I place my unworthy self in your hands, that your will may be done." The crowd fell silent. Then the bishop asked if he might have the use of a small coracle, the humblest of watercraft. When one was brought to him, he set out into the current downstream of La Gratuce. Using his single oar, he steered the little boat till it approached the waterfall. Suddenly the sea dragon appeared, breathing immense flames through its nostrils. Bishop Franc stood upright in his coracle and faced the beast. He extracted his bishop's pectoral cross, held it before the monster, a tiny figure opposing the enormous creature of the deeps. At the sign of the cross, the dragon bellowed but did not advance. "O creature of darkness, brood of Satan the evil one, I command you to go from this place and never return," the bishop intoned. The crowd gathered on the river bank grew silent with amazement. Not only did the dragon not rush forth and seize their bishop, he became unwontedly quiet. Then he turned and gave a mighty fart that reverberated for miles around as it echoed off the cliffs. The air was filled with noxious, sulphurous fumes, which suddenly ignited in an explosion. The dragon was instantly consumed in a ball of flame that rose 100 feet into the air, but the bishop was unharmed. Calmly he steered his coracle to the shore, where the stunned crowd greeted him first in amazed silence, and then in rapturous cheering. "Do not thank me," he instructed them. "This was the hand of God at work. May what has transpired today ignite your faith as it has ignited the evil one. Let us offer to God the prayer of thanks that is his due, showing the power of the cross to stand firm before evil and to overcome it." Bishop Franc led a long life as preacher and teacher until, full of years, he went to sleep with his forefathers. He was buried beneath the nave of his little church. Later, when a stone cathedral was erected in Périgueux, his remains were transferred to the crypt where they rest to this day. His tomb became the subject of great veneration. Pilgrims made long and difficult journeys to the site, returning home with relics that most believed had been part of the body of the saint. But his mighty deed is remembered today in the valley of the Dordogne, where a tiny chapel dedicated to Saint Franc stands on the hill overlooking the site of the miracle that he wrought nearly 1800 years ago. It attests to the saint whose faith and courage saved the village, now the town of Lalande, and even today some say that at times of exceptionally low water, an imprint of the skeleton of the monster can be seen scorched into the bed of the river immediately above La Gratuce.